Good afternoon, everyone. I'm meteorologist Gerard Jabali here for NewsNation, and we're here to discuss the brand new released tropical outlook from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. A branch of that would be the National Hurricane Center, but they just came out with their brand new outlook for the season. First thing is, we are not officially in hurricane season yet. It begins on June 1st, and typically the season starts out pretty quiet, but we are already seeing some activity out there. Thankfully, it's not going to impact anybody, but let's get right over here to the forecasts that we have from the Hurricane Center. So the first thing to note is that, this just came out today. We're expecting an above average season this year. Last year was absolutely record-breaking. This is what we're expecting here for this year, the forecast from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, otherwise known as NOAA. They're forecasting 13 to 20 named storms this season. On average, we're around 12, so they're above the average here. Last year, obviously, was a record-breaking 30 storms. They're forecasting 6 to 10 of those to become hurricanes, with 3 to 5 of those storms becoming major hurricanes, which is Category 3 or above. We average around 6 hurricanes per year, and well, 3 of those becoming major hurricanes. Last year, again, another record-shattering year, 13 hurricanes with 7 of those becoming major. Now, this is the first forecast that the NOAA, at least the National Hurricane Center is looking at, NOAA part of, that is doing that forecast, but there's other places that have been doing the same forecasting. Colorado State University is very well known for doing hurricane forecasting per year. This is their forecast as of April 8th. They come out with a newer, updated one on June 3rd, but for now, this is the one that they have, which pretty closely matches what NOAA has for the hurricane season. 17 tropical storms they're forecasting, 8 becoming hurricanes, 4 of those becoming major hurricanes. So again, as you can tell, they're pretty similar with NOAA having that window. Colorado State University will be updating again June 3rd. We'll see if they keep with their current forecast or if they change it at all. All right, let's go into a little bit of what it is that we're looking for, forecasters are looking at for hurricane season. The first thing they might look at are what the ocean waters are doing. These are the sea surface temperatures around the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. That's typically where we see the very beginnings of hurricanes to start firing up early in the season. Right now, we're seeing temperatures of those waters above 80 degrees, some places as warm as 84 near the Bahamas. All you need are waters of 80 degrees or warmer, and that will be sufficient enough to develop a storm. The warmer the water, of course, the more fuel it has, the more it can develop. So the waters in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean are sufficient enough to start developing storms already. Nothing happening there right now, thankfully. The next thing that we're going to be looking at is also water temperatures, but these are the anomalies. This is something that you may have heard of. We're talking about the El Nino and La Nina. They're essentially the same thing. They're just sort of opposites of each other. El Nino is nothing more than just warmer than average water temperatures off the equatorial Pacific Ocean. And La Nina is the opposite. It is cooler than average. We're not talking about much. We're talking a few degrees, but that can have a massive global effect on weather, and this is one of the connections that they look for hurricane season. Right now, we are at what's called ENSO, which is the El Nino Southern Oscillation, neutral, meaning it's not warmer than average, it's not cooler than average. We're looking at the temperatures there. It's pretty much kind of an even keel on that. So that is basically indicative that we'll have more normal conditions. So how does El Nino or La Nina affect hurricane season? Well, one of the things that La Nina will do, if we have a La Nina year like we did last season, we often have much more active seasons across the Atlantic and Caribbean, but fewer in the Pacific side. You'll have more wind shear in La Nina seasons through the fall and winter months across the Pacific, but in the Atlantic, as we had this past year, it'll lead to weaker wind shear and more hurricanes will be able to develop. They'll be able to stay stronger. They'll really be able to churn along, and they could possibly continue for much longer periods of time. So La Nina not happening as we are seeing it right now. The good news is it's not forecast a likelihood to change much. We're likely going to stay in a neutral state. So that's one good thing that may at least lead to hurricanes being fewer in number than last year, because last year was, again, practically off the chart. So again, talking about wind shear, here's an example of what wind shear does. You know, we have hurricanes, they billow up, they spread out. It's a big cycle that just vents itself. It's its own monster. And when you have wind shear, it can tear the top of the storm or shear it apart a bit, and it's not a very efficient machine. And when this happens, at least take stronger storms, make them weaker, or it can completely inhibit the development of some storms. It can completely shred them apart. So that's the good news. All right, let's take a look at hurricane names for this year. One of the changes that actually happened was from this past year. So your primary list, we would start with Ana, which we could see that one develop actually here in just the next 48 to 72 hours, by the way. And it's way out in the northern part of the Atlantic. But those are the names that we have this year. Now the secondary list is what's changed. We used to have the Greek alphabet. In the Greek alphabet, we came close to exhausting, but the bigger problem is that last year with the Greek alphabet, we had many storms that were big enough where the names had to be retired. Remember, when a storm makes a big enough impact, like Katrina or Andrew or Hugo, those names will never be used again. So one of those names likely was going to be retired. And by the way, Zeta got upgraded. It was actually a Category 3 after the fact. They went back and looked. But we had many big hurricanes. Delta, Epsilon, and Zeta were all pretty big. Eta as well. So with so many of those possible for retirement, they changed it. Now we have a secondary list that will get recycled every year. And that way, if a name ever gets retired, they will just go back to that. So again, the secondary list now is going to be showing that we have names like Adria, and that could possibly be retired, but they'll just use that list and cycle them out as needed. All right, so again, let's look at 2020 one more time, because it was such an amazing year in so many ways as far as storms are concerned. That's the number of storms that made landfall in the continental United States. Isaias was one of the earlier ones, but as well as Bertha. But as you notice, we had numerous storms across the Gulf Coast. At least two of those major hurricanes, Laura, Category 4, and Zeta, which was recently upgraded, because at the time it was measured that it was a Category 2. They went back later and found that it was more likely Category 3 strength at the time of landfall. So the most important thing to take away from this entire forecast, which we'll go back to, this is the National Hurricane Center forecast one more time, or NOAA, a greater than average chance for a more active season this year. They're saying 60% likelihood that this will be an above average season. But whether it's above average season, or below average, it only takes one storm to impact you and to, of course, cause a lot of damage and hurt folks. So it's important you prepare no matter what the season forecast is. It's important to prepare for it no matter what, because it only takes one storm to really make a mess of things. And this forecast that you're seeing also does not take into account how many storms will impact land. You know, this is a forecast of the formation, not whether or not they'll actually make landfall or where they will go. So a perfect example, Hurricane Andrew, which absolutely decimated South Florida back in the early 90s, that was a very quiet year by comparison. But Andrew was, again, the first storm to form, and a big one, Category 5, some years back, but that was quite a memorable and notorious storm, and that's why you still have to prepare, because even in a low activity season, you could still have that one storm, that Andrew storm. Let's really go. All right, we're just going to check and see if we have any questions. Nope, we're good. So if you guys want to leave comments, questions, you can certainly do that. We'll be, of course, updating again, I'm sure, when we get the new Colorado State forecast updated. Hurricane season, again, officially begins June 1st, but we can have storms that form outside of that. There's one up in the North Atlantic now, expected to just stay out in the middle of the ocean, so we're not too worried about that. But hurricane season is already off to at least an early start. We'll see how active it's really going to be. But we'll see you tonight on NewsNation. Meteorologist Albert Ramon will be on, and he'll be discussing this upcoming storm that we could be looking at forming, which would be Ana. If it does, in fact, get named, it'll be the first one of the season before the season starts. So we'll see you tonight on NewsNation Prime, and I'm meteorologist Gerard Bailey. Have a great day.